My name is BirtheJorgensen, and I'm currently studying for a Masters of Letters Fine Art Practice at Glasgow School of Art in the sculpture pathway. In this talk, I'll be telling you a little bit about my background in experimental theatre and about the working process that I have established based on these experiences to research the questions at the core of my practice with today. Between 2005 and 2011, I worked as a live visual artist with the experimental multidisciplinary company Apocryphal Theatre, which often was referred to as post-dramatic theatre. The company consisted of performers from a wide variety of backgrounds, such as comedy, physical theatre, mime. We had a performer who had specialized in integrating martial arts techniques into her movement patterns. We had dancers from different backgrounds, an improvisational violinist / sound artist, and we had a lighting designer who had studied philosophy and now saw lighting design as a way of performing these philosophies. And then there was me, the live visual artist. We would do a wide range of performances for the public in theatres, art galleries as well, some museums, universities, and in the street, and sometimes also for radio. But at the heart of our many activities was our weekly exploratory lab sessions at Camden People's Theatre in London. Here we would collectively develop tools and create concepts, always empathizing direct cross-disciplinary experimentation rather than the director telling us what to do and us then doing that. Our work was often heavily structured by stage text, individual and group scores, and by the many tools and concepts that we had developed. Yet the work was always performed through improvisation. But what is a live visual artist? Well, Apocryphal Theatre's director, Julia Lee Barclay, invited me not only to be, but also to find out what it would mean to be a live visual artist in their company. She used to refer to the violinist and me as the irregular combatants, although I think we all could be described as irregular combatants, really, in that company. Well, improvising upon scores, I would produce a stream of quick, sketch-like sculptural elements live on the stage, and sharing the creative moment with fellow performers who at any point could intervene in my process, and with an audience who quite often would get directly involved, rather than showing finished static sculptures in a gallery space, radically expanded my ideas about how a work can exist and about what one can share with an audience. It also made me question my own authority as an artist. Working so incredibly fast and improvisationally gave way for a whole new kind of aesthetics. There was no time for vanity, but rather just these sort of very quick reactions or responses expressed through movements with materials in a way, where every step somehow felt unfamiliar but necessary. And what was further experienced was that, like American painter Robert Rauschenberg said, that you cannot have risk without risk. And this picture that you see here is from a full-scale production we did with a company called Besides You Lose Your Soul, or The History of Western Civilization. We did that in 2009. The set mainly consisted of 1 ton of pre-World War II learning books in the widest possible sense. And we were all dressed up like detectives searching for the soul. So in this picture here, I was constantly being interrupted by Fred Beckers, who you can see here. That's me on the other side of him there. I'm sort of trying to raise this table onto a stack of books. And shortly after this picture was taken, in the effort of making a kind of throne, I placed a chair on top of the table, of the already raised table, and since no one else took that invitation, I crawled up into the chair thinking that I could take on like a statue-like presence of some kind of king or queen, so turning myself into a statue. But however, whilst mounting my throne, the whole thing came tumbling down, including me. Everything in the room just stopped, and I panicked, for real, live on stage. An elderly woman in the audience looked at me sympathetically, and she sort of opened her arms towards me, and I just somehow took that invitation and ran over to her, and she gave me a big hug and let me sit there with her like for a while. And as that was happening, the lighting designer, he sort of lit us in a warm, gentle spotlight and darkened everything else in the room, although there was something else going on in different places. And the violinist started playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And after that, the script sort of carried on in a new, much gentler tone that it had done before. Being prone to accidents, improvising, in my experience, can bring the audience to the place that they are already at, only more attentively. In this case, they certainly appeared to be sort of right there in the room with us through this sort of moment of chaotic accident. Well, in 2011, Apocryphal Theatre ceased to receive funding, and after 6 incredible years, the company dissolved. I decided to return to art school to try and transfer the work and research I had done as a live visual artist into an installation-based practice of my own. Yeah, so the questions at the course, or at the core of my installation-based practice today are: how do we construct sacred and secular spaces in materialist times? How can I say something worthwhile without irony? And can the rules that govern copyright and plagiarism be rethought to better fit the 21st century? The themes that I research through my practice are that which is of the sacred. And by sacred, I don't mean religious, but it's rather sort of small personal moments in the everyday life, perhaps. Like when you suddenly find yourself singing in the shower or drinking a glass of water, or witnessing like a spectacular sunset. So it's that sort of kind of sacred. And then that which is of the secular or secular nature, and that which is idiosyncratic, things we catch ourselves doing or saying all of the time, or a really sort of like the way a kid would draw like a table, for instance, or like you can think of like a really idiosyncratic looking blue plastic bag or something like this. And then like gender-based, and then something faith-based. That are sort of the themes I work with. And why these themes? Well, it's sort of quite simple, really. Although I find some of them quite difficult, particularly the faith-based one. I have found that they just move me really deeply, and it's something I want to explore further and research and really work with. The tools that I use in my research, or that I use to research these themes with, are cutting up, which is a technique not invented but certainly made more explicit through various publications by William Burroughs and Brian Gysin back in the late 70s. And I will illustrate this technique in the following slides through my own practice. And improvising, and then collaborating across disciplines or speaking with more voices than my own. And neither do I mind using material that references belief systems, art historical movements, or cultures that are other than my own. In order to show you how I work, I would like to share with you my first tentative steps into a practice of my own at a residency on a rooftop terrace in southern Morocco. Yeah, on arriving to this place, I realized just how perfect the setting was considering the themes that I was working with. As you might be able to just sort of see a little bit there, there were satellite dishes on every single rooftop all across the town. And there was like a grid of minarets from where imams would call to prayer through powerful speaker systems every 4th hour. And of course, other rooftop terraces where people would engage in typical everyday activities such as mending broken things, growing plants, hanging laundry, or drinking tea with friends. All presences that created like the perfect context for these early experiments. Only using materials that I found around me or in my backpack, I would quickly establish 5 small assemblages relating to something that would appear to me as gender-based, faith-based, secular, idiosyncratic, and sacred. I would then spend time just sitting observing in silence, and when the moment felt ripe, get up and in one dance-like improvisational movement, quickly cut them all up into one piece. During this process, I would disregard what each assemblage stood for and try only to take aesthetic choices in relation to color, shape, and texture. Yeah, I would end up with one larger assemblage, all themes present and interconnected, somehow undermined or amplified in new and unexpected ways. It's important to me to do more than to illustrate known facts, my own thoughts, or even the theoretical ideas that fuel my practice. As fellow performer and writer, Theron Smith, who also used to work with apocryphal theatre, wrote in an article about why we improvise, said, "We do not want to make work that takes the audience via a planned itinerary to a prepared emotional destination. Working really fast and cutting up through this kind of improvisational dance allows me to better get beneath my own preconceived ideas and prejudice in relation to these themes that I work with. It also allows me to get beneath my own sort of really deep-seated and often unconscious cultural investments into what I was raised to believe that these themes mean. Or as the director of the apocryphal theatre company, Julia Lee Barclay, put it, it allows me to make scratches in the psychic wallpaper. So, yeah, I'm just going to show you a few images now of the work I've been doing since I was in Morocco. Here I have returned to the studio, or in this case, it's like a former painter's studio in the garden of a now squatted house in Stamford Hill in London. I prefer to work site-specifically, to ask what are the rules of the given room that I find myself in, and what is of this place. And I'm currently exploring what listing these 5 small sub-assemblages in the material list that artists they normally have to provide when presenting work, what that may add to the meaning of the work. the work itself being rather ambiguous, and you might not necessarily be able to trace these 5 quite sort of heavy themes there, but directly. But yeah, what kind of place of tension does that add to sort of list those 5 starting points alongside the picture of the work? And there's some details. And here, this piece is created in the basement of a huge Victorian house in London that was an Orthodox Jewish family home for generations. They'd left many things in the basement, such as this wallpaper that you can see. As mentioned, I work fast, and once a piece is established, it gets documented and packed away, usually not to exist in the same configuration, if at all, ever again. My work exists only briefly in its physical form, but it remains in the form of an archive of photographic documentation and a list of its component parts. And last but not least, there's this piece here. And it will include a song from a tape that was given to Julia Lee Barclay, the theatre director, and myself by a Kurdish refugee back in 2009, whilst we were dining at a Turkish restaurant in an Afro-Caribbean part of town. He had recorded this album in a tiny room in London, and the songs on this tape, he told us, were about longing for home. And yeah, I would like to just step down there and plug in my computer so you can hear it with the track on. And if it's not too much trouble, I would actually like to ask you all to come and sit down in the floor here in front of me, or in front of the piece. Thank you very much.
شوتي كذكار لك دسان ذاك الأيام دوزة بقابلة بقراش شوتي كذكار لك ذاك الأيام دمدي عجيبة صواري جواني كيشين بوزي أنستيرا صوفي برايمك جواني بسيدة قال عجيبة ذكي قاضي حجيج منو تبركوز كوچ فري خود رابي دبچ مالا جناخ وتوسا كچا خود دميلا اخلي لي 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 من ايام لا 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 من لا لا من لا لا من لا لا من لا من ايام وكل ثقة شاغد قطع حلال مديران الزيو لا 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 برا لا 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 برا لا 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 برا لا 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 برا لا عليك بترادك كوميجرانا علي بترادك كوميجرانا يا عم دم بوسه فشكافا عليك خطاب اجنازرتا عليك انا جندق بسانه تدق زي الشكر الشكر ما خاشا غير دوراتني من يا عم وذاقا شاغل دوراتني مع زي بابي جوري من يا عم دشوا ميران مخاضة علي كاش ما تكوش لاش ما تخن هيدي بإفارة العزي بين أخلي لي 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 نبني يا عم لا 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 نبني 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 يا عم شمعوني حنا بابك ورد بوصاب إفارة حلال بفيران الزيو
Thank you very much.